Hi, welcome to the Interdisciplinary Research Leaders mini course. My name is Michael Oakes. I'm the director of the IRL program and I'm a professor of epidemiology here at the University of Minnesota. Today, we're going to try to have a course on nothing short of science and research. This small little topic that we'll try to get through in a couple of PowerPoint slides. Let me begin with a little bit of humor. Here you can see this fancy professor in front of this podium, perhaps much like myself, although I don't have the mustache. And he's saying, I know so much, I don't know where to begin. I, fortunately, don't have that problem. This is obviously a challenging topic. It's challenging to talk to other scientists, many of you in the same way, but especially challenging when we're trying to talk about action research. So that's the needle we're trying to thread with this program, as you well know. And we're going to try to do a little bit of the research or scientific framework here today. For some of you, this will be quite obvious, as if when the teacher says, hey, where's X? And that brilliant student doesn't use the Pythagorean theorem, but instead says, here's X, pointing it out, of course, on the graphic. This is the sort of natural or sort of basic thinking that is so important. It's obvious and complicated at the same time. And that's what we're trying to get at in this first presentation. As a general rule, when we talk about science, we talk about research for the IRL program and beyond. My general statement is this work is so important, we have to use our best thinking. In fact, it's too important to be sloppy in our thinking and our approach. And so this course, this presentation, is one effort to hopefully refine our efforts to become more focused, more rigorous, stronger, better, faster, as we've been talking about in the IRL program from the start. When it comes to our research, whether we're doing action work in the lower valley of California or in Maine or in Texas, anywhere in between, we want to be passionate about the research, of course. And I know all of you IRL members are passionate about your work. But we have to be passionately dispassionate when it comes to research itself. That is, we have to have, once removed, a sense of this matters so much, we can't let our personal ideology, we can't let our personal hopes and dreams get in the way of scientific fact. That's one of the key goals here, to understand when to be passionate, when to be activist, and when to be dispassionate about facts. Facts are those difficult things, of course. And so throughout this presentation, this mini course, we want to try to balance that great tension between being passionate and dispassionate all at the same time. Let me offer a little story that one of my mentors shared with me many years ago. This is just an apocryphal story that I hope brings a little humor, but always makes me chuckle. Here's the scenario. That there's a prison in the middle of the desert, and there's an old man in the prison in the middle of the desert, but there's no lock on the prison door. There's just an open door, maybe a small fence all decayed, and the old man is in there. And in the guards bring a young man, perhaps a woman, but a young person, and this person's all fired up and very upset that they are now imprisoned in this desert. So some time goes by, and the young person escapes, runs out of the prison because, of course, there's no lock. Some time later, maybe a week, the young person is brought back by the guards, sunburned, dehydrated, just near death. And the young person's brought up, put back in that prison cell, and the old man says, I knew you'd be back. And the young person says, what do you mean? He said, well, there's no escape from here. There's no water for 400 miles in any direction because I've tried before. And the young person says, wait, you've tried before? And he said, yes, many times. Well, why didn't you tell me? And the old man says, who the hell wants to publish negative results? Hope that brings some humor to you. The point is very valid. Sometimes when we don't find what we're looking for, this can be so important for all of us collectively to move forward. So if we're trying to change a policy, if we're trying to get kids more food, if we're trying to help people we really care about, and we find something doesn't work, we have to report that as honestly as possible so that others don't try to escape from that prison, as we say. Now there's a great tension here, and that's the whole point. What I want to offer you, as I said, is a framework for understanding these scientific questions and acting, taking action, which of course is the driver of the IRL program. Do these things simultaneously. One way through that is to think about this idea of causation. We are keenly interested in whether our policy changes cause an improvement in health, whether our social norm activism, our collective action, causes a reduction in health disparities. These are things we talk about. So why the rooster? Well, the rooster is a symbol of what is correlation and not causation. Think of it this way, that the sun rises every morning and the rooster crows. That's a correlation. We know that, and we can use that. That correlation can be very useful to us because, of course, it's a lovely alarm clock if you like to wake early. On the other hand, with a little food and a little bit of other behavioral modification, we could probably train that rooster to wake up earlier or later. In other words, the sun isn't causing the rooster to crow at this certain time without some behavioral modification. They're merely correlated. And so we want to be careful in our collective work together when we're talking about something we can change through some causal force or whether things are correlated. Now, causality is a super slippery topic. And I want to give you yet another picture. This, of course, a sprig of grapes. The issue of causality has vexed scientists and statisticians and so many others for so long. Does X cause Y? Does this intervention reduce health disparities? Are key questions. Well, for a long time, researchers and activists wanted to stay away from that question because we can't really know about cause. It's too difficult, it's too rigorous, it's too challenging. The amount of evidence needed is too demanding. To me, this brings up the fable of sour grapes. Remember the story where the fox sees some grapes across a fence, and the fox really wants those grapes, as if it's this key idea of causality. But because of the fence, the fox can't get to the grapes. And therefore the fox decides he doesn't want the grapes. This is the idea of cognitive dissonance, that because it's so difficult to get to the grapes, I no longer want the grapes. I think this is the history of modern research methods for many people. It's so hard to understand causality, let's pretend we don't want it. Well, in this program, and at least my teaching around it, that's not where we want to go. We do want the grapes. Super difficult to get, but in an understanding of what the grapes mean and the necessary assumptions to get them, if you will, that's where we want to be. So we can understand what we might change in order to improve health and reduce health disparities. Relatedly, by way of introduction, the stuff we're working on collectively is so challenging. As most of you might know, so much of the way we think about health in modern society is about an individual, his or her health. For me, it brings up this topic of Robinson Crusoe, the painting you see next to me. Robinson Crusoe, of course, is the metaphor of someone living on an island by themselves. No other people. Let's stay away from his friend or slave Friday for the minute. But Robinson Crusoe's by himself, and so his health is determined by all that he does, whether he hunts or fishes, whether he's out in the sun, is properly hydrated, sleeping, whether he cuts his toe on a bacterial-ridden clamshell. Robinson's health is up to Robinson himself. But that's not the way it works in the real world. As you know, in the IRL program and the others, we're interested in the social determinants of health. So we're trying to expand this vision of Robinson, one person's health determined by themselves, into a vision of health determined by social forces, social interactions, whether it's market forces at the global level, whether it's a particular mayor, maybe it's structural racism, all the things you and I are thinking about. This is the vision of health that we want to understand. Now, importantly, this vision of health makes understanding cause and effect so much more difficult, but nevertheless so critical to understand. It may interest you to know that this idea of Robinson Crusoe and if you will, the normal or historical way we understand health is the same way we understand health of cattle or other farmed animals, animals that we can control. But that's not the world we want to live in. Freedom and other aspects of individual choice is not about this. And so, again, we want to step beyond. We want to transcend our conventional methods and understanding of health from Robinson Crusoe, from correlation to causation, and moving beyond into a social world where health is determined by so many factors.